Thank you. Glad to be here.
How you doing?
Richard, how you doing?
How's Marion doing?
Doing better. Middle there.
Okay, I'm going to call to order this special workshop, February 1st, 2021. And Sherry, can you take a roll?
Mayor Miller,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer,
Present.
Councilmember Bryan,
Here.
Councilmember Frizzlone,
Here.
Councilmember Plitus.
Here.
Thank you. So the purpose of this is last Tuesday, we were setting some priorities for what we want to get accomplished this year. And I think we all realize that we have a crisis here with the amount of public safety officers that we're not able to recruit or retain. So our chief has a presentation for us. Chief, if you want to come up.
Yeah. So we've prepared a short PowerPoint. I'm going to call Kurt up about towards the end to give you the financial situation. But the bottom line is I'm in a crisis. I'm having problems hiring people, and I'm having problems retaining people. Some of it is due to retirements, some of it, but a lot of it is to do with people that don't want to do this job anymore, or they're leaving for a better position somewhere else, where they can make more money, have better benefits, and quite frankly, we have gotten to the point where we're not competitive anymore. And when I say competitive, I can't afford to hire what I call second-tier people. We cannot lower our standards in any way, shape, or form. That just leads to a crisis down the road, and I'm not going to do that to this city. So I've got this little presentation. I'll go through the slides. If you have questions, feel free. If not, we'll get started. So I've got 35 full-time positions budgeted. In 2 weeks, I'll have between 12 and 15 openings. I know I'm going to have at least 12 and possibly 2 or 3 more because we hear, you know how the scuttlebutt goes that other people are thinking about leaving.
Chief, what's the 35 full-time? Is it full-time public safety?
Yes, that's the PSO will be the public safety officer positions.
If
That's what I have budgeted.
Okay, if I can clarify that, do I understand previously we had 37?
Yes.
But through some conversation that we had a couple of months ago, you agreed to do the 35.
Right.
So otherwise, we would have been, if you still have 37.
I can fully staff and fully keep this city safe and give great service, which we have been doing for many, many years, with 35 positions. I could even, as long as I have those positions budgeted, because I've always got people in training, I've always got people that aren't triple trained, just because that's how it rotates through, but I can staff as many people as I need on the street every day and have the support services that I need to make this a successful city. There's anecdotally, and just from me talking to other chiefs, there's approximately a 20% vacancy rate around the country. Some states, I can mention 2 states, Oregon and Washington State, are absolutely devastated because they have been, as the media has beaten up the police for these last 10 months, 11 months, they have officers fleeing, not just fleeing the job in Washington State or Oregon, they're fleeing the business completely, getting out of police work. But around here in this area, there's about a 20% vacancy rate. As you can see from what I showed you before, we're a lot more than that.
Looks like we're about 37%.
Well, yes, and like I say, it's a perfect storm. The pandemic has put a tremendous amount of stress on people. The retirements that we've been planning for, other than there was a couple retirements that we didn't plan for. People got tired. One of my officers, she decided to be a teacher. People make decisions for their lives, not for what we need. But I am having a terrible time replacing them. For example, we had 5 recruits. I've got 2 left because the other 3 didn't match up. They just didn't get to where we needed them to be, and they weren't going to be. So I'm down to 2.
What does that mean?
Well, when you come out of what we call rookie school, police academy,
Sure.
we put you in a field training officer program. The field training officer program, you go through, we try and show you everything that we can about policing to teach you how to be, I call it public safety, but let's just talk about police work. Teach you how to be a police officer so that you can go out there and be that psychologist, you can be that judge, jury, whatever you have to be and do your job. Soup to nuts. That program, you go through 3 different trainers. And it's a program that's been in existence for a long time. And you go through steps, and there's boxes to check.
And how long does that program last?
Well, the ideal or the parameter is about 3 months. But some people get through it quicker, and some people take longer. It's not set in stone, but it's a 3-month. The ideal thing is about a 3-month program. After the 3 months, then you hopefully get to put this officer out on the street by themselves, and within a few years they become a good, competent police officer. But if they can't get through our training program, and the training program is very much the same for every police department, but if you hire the wrong people, they're gonna do wrong things.
So
Simple as that.
stepping back, do we not know if we hired the right person until they go through this? There's no way to proactively.
Look, the rookie school, the training school, is a 6-month training program.
Is that the one at Daytona State?
Well, yes, well, it can be anywhere in the state. It's the same training program everywhere.
So it's absolutely uniform. So
It's, the curriculum is uniform. I'm not saying the instructors are totally uniform.
okay, fair enough. So you're gonna have, it's like all things in life.
And then they come out and they write a state exam.
Yeah.
Now they're certified. Sort of like you pass the bar exam and now you're a lawyer, but how good are you? You know, they're still,
Certainly not as good as Politis.
no, nobody. We know that. So the FTO program, the training that we do, that's what is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And like I said, we had 5, now I'm down to 2. Now those 2 are going to make it.
Chief, let me ask you a question. Do you have a definite cutoff? They either make it or they don't, or do your training officers say, well, I think they got potential if we let them go train them a little longer?
This is how it works.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the training officers, being an FTO is I was an FTO. Most young officers go to the training. We go to a school to learn how to be a training officer. And I did it when I was a long, long time ago. And I remember that was the most frustrating thing. You get a young kid and they're just out of police school and you have to show them soup to nuts. I mean, how to write a report, how to write a ticket, how to talk to people, how to deal with a domestic, how to deal with a burglar, how to arrest people, how to handcuff. They learn certain things in the academy, but they're not police officers when they come out. They just have the piece of paper. So we listen to our training officers a lot, and they document everything every day. And it's a labor of love, the FTOs. But they come and they'll talk to, usually well, at one time it was Lieutenant Schoenbrod doing the FTO program. And they come and they talk to the sergeant in charge of it, and they decide, the training officers and the supervisors decide, can we give this person some more time? Now, if they do things that are so, I'm sorry.
Lieutenant Schoenberg?
He was.
Okay.
Now,
You used to make that decision.
Well, when I was a sergeant, I oversaw the FTO program.
Okay, so you would make this decision whether this person really could pass muster or not. Part of it is just your intuitive background, and et cetera. So who does that now?
There's another sergeant in charge of the FTA program now.
Who is that?
Sergeant Matters?
Patterson, okay.
But what happens is,
But there is.
they come to me.
Okay.
They come to me and we go over it with the staff. But this is a serious thing, because this is somebody who's invested a lot of money. We've invested a lot of money, but there are things that some of these trainees do that are beyond the pale, and they're not gonna make it. Like, if they can't go to a domestic disturbance and learn how to separate the husband and the wife who are fighting and can't handle it, and the situation gets out of control, and they can't be taught how to do that, they're not gonna be police officers.
And we don't want to relax our standards.
Well, all we're gonna end up with is somebody's gonna get hurt, somebody's gonna get in trouble, there's gonna be lawsuits. Again, I was talking to Richard Bryan the other day, and I said, we don't get sued here. My people we don't get complaints. We don't get complaints because we hire the best people. And if we hire somebody that we think is really good and they're not, we'll get rid of them. It's a cruel business. Captain Fowler has an expression he's used a lot. It's hard to become a police officer. It's even harder to stay one. And it's very true.
So let me ask you a question, and to I guess all three of you. So if it's very difficult, I mean, you're giving me a clear-cut opinion. Somebody jump in here. I'm getting a clear-cut opinion that this is no bag of donuts to be able to go through the 3 months and then really pass muster by the three of you. I mean, that's what I'm getting. Basically, okay, so that being said, if it's hard as it is to recruit, and it is hard as it is to get through, and then pass muster from the three of you, how does that affect the cross-training? I mean, aren't we asking somebody in a very difficult time to recruit? I mean, it's difficult. I mean, right now in particular, I agree with you. You just read the papers, right? I mean, we're all on the same page here. But again, now you're asking the guy to not only go through rigorous training to become a police officer, which is probably the more, well, I don't want to say that. I don't know which is more difficult, police or fire. I have no idea. But having said that, now you got to train them for fire, and you got to train them for a paramedic. And given the difficulty and the scrutiny that you're applying, doesn't that even add more difficulty to the process?
In some ways, yes.
Thank you. I mean, that's just common sense to me, right?
The fire training is basically a nut and bolt job. There's formulas how much water to put on fire. That's actually it's a difficult school, a lot of memorization, but it's an activity. It's something that doesn't have to be. It's by rote, I guess you could say. Break in, do this, do that, do this, do that. Whereas policing is you have to be an independent thinker to be a cop. We try to hire people with what we call servant hearts, that they want to do public service, that this attracts that type of person. This public safety thing is difficult, but part of the advantage to it, and when I came here, I was not a public safety person, I was a police officer. The big advantage to it is that our people have compassion and they have empathy. So I don't know if Mike's been around police officers a lot in his life, but our officers that we hire, they feel for people. They don't look to hurt people or just to throw them in jail. They have a different mentality when they deal with people. And that's why one of the reasons that public safety has been so successful here in Daytona Beach Shores, because my officers, that's who they are. They're public servants and they want to help. They want to help whatever the problem is. So, but finding them, not all that easy. So let me.
We'll let you continue with your presentation.
Yeah, you guys.
Okay.
So the next slide is the starting hourly pay. And as you look at this, you're going to see that we're well down the limit. We're going down the amount that the officers start at. And this is one of the problems that I have, because when we go to recruit and when we advertise for officers, we have to be competitive because people will not come in the door unless you offer them a decent starting salary, decent benefits, and like I said, I made a joke last time, but it's true. The first thing they ask for, how much you pay, and do you have a take-home car? So this is our where we're at now.
Chief, could you back up to that? You mentioned a take-home car.
Wait a minute, I got to find the arrows.
How many of those cities offer take-home cars?
All of them.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Everybody except probably, does Ponce Inlet?
I think Ponce Inlet doesn't.
That's the only one.
Everybody but Ponce Inlet and us offer take-home vehicles. Take-home vehicles are actually not a huge expense for a city. They last longer. I'll get into that, but it's not a huge expense. It's actually just a nice benefit for the officers. When I first became a cop, we didn't have take-home cars, and then we went to take-home cars, and we found right away that the cars lasted a couple years longer. We replace our cars every 3 years. That's how they rotate through, because we put a lot of miles on them.
Ownership and pride.
Oh, the cars are clean. There's a lot of advantages to it. There's some, it costs you money in gas. You're still in.
Do we lease the cars or do we?
No, we buy them. We buy them. Leasing is, you really don't need to. It's not really worth it. Kurt manages to auction them off for.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Chief, how many of those police departments right there are unionized?
How many are unionized?
Port Orange is?
Everybody.
Everybody?
There's no other city in Volusia County that does not have a union except ours.
Wow, even
We do
Pond?
not have a union, and I'm gonna tell you, one of the reasons we don't have a union is because city councils here have always treated the officers decently. They've always tried to keep them special, as it were, and also the unions have a very difficult time deciding who would represent. When I came here 23 years ago, they were looking to join a union. And when I came in, I remember, I didn't know much about it, but I said to the union, to the newspaper, I said, if you could just put a thing in saying, hey, could you give me 6 months before the officers, give me some time to see if I can straighten things out when I was brought in. And they took a vote, and a couple months later, they realized they didn't need a union. What they needed was a support of a mayor and council and a manager.
If I may, look, it would appear to me, just off the top of my head here, we are roughly, call it $2 an hour less than the top person, or maybe $1.75 an hour less than the top city, which is New Smyrna.
Well, and this is a fluctuating number. Let me put it this way. I'm not the first chief that's gotten up to their city councils and done this, okay? So far, New Smyrna Beach has done it. Orange City has done it. Port Orange is doing it now. I don't know if it's the chief or the union, but the city councils are all being told the same thing, that they're not competitive. Orange City, at one time, you see they're up to $19. They were at $16 an hour. The chief went to the council and said, I can't hire anybody. As soon as he got more pay, he started getting some applicants. Now, again, I'm not telling you that I don't want to say anything about another police department. I don't know. I just know who I need to attract. I have to attract the best.
And your thoughts, and I think you've explained them before, stated them, that you wanted to be number 2 or 3
Yeah,
on this list.
if you excuse me just 1 second, because I'm not used to yapping this much.
He has to take a drink of water.
So, I feel like a car salesman.
Had we discussed that previously, or you've mentioned before you'd like to be 2 or 3?
What happened in years past, I remember, Mike would remember this, the city council said that we want to be the highest paid after they're triple trained. And that's all well and good, but if you're only a nickel higher than somebody else that can start pay, starting pay, even after triple training, you're not really accomplishing anything. We did really well for a long time, being very competitive, but this past year and a half with the media beating up the police and the pandemic and just the service level, the new generation, it has changed a lot. I'm not, as I go through the slides, I'm not saying that we need to be always the #1 highest paid. What I'm saying is we have to be competitive. And I've got a couple ways of being competitive now And then, next budget year, moving into golden handcuffs, I guess you could say, I have to retain the quality people I've got. I had a person who recently came in to talk to me, and he said he's been here 15 years. He's a detective, he's a police officer, paramedic, and a detective. He makes about the same amount of money that a patrolman in New Smyrna Beach makes after 7 years. And he wanted to know, how is that? Why would he stay here after these 14 years or 15 years? And we fell behind. It's just the way it is. And so I'm going to move on here a little bit. So we're not competitive, even locally. And we need to attract applicants from around the state if we want to get the best. I have to. Now, I'm not telling you that we're going to be able to pay what Miami pays or pay what Orange County pays, but we have to be competitive. And there's ways of being competitive, not just with the dollars and cents, but with the benefits. Some of these are going to come up later in the year. They're not going to come up today. What I'm asking for today is just a little bit different. But I want you to see what kind of competition I'm looking at. So this is where what I'm asking. By the way, none of this is going. I don't want any of this to affect me. This has nothing to do with me as the director. This is just the sworn employees, the other sworn. So what I want to do is I want to start. Kurt and I have talked about the financial part of this, and Kurt's going to speak to this in a few minutes. I'd like to increase the starting pay April 1st to $20.58 an hour. I'd like to also April 1st bring everybody that's up over that up $1.70 an hour. That'll keep the spread between. There's nothing worse than having to listen to a 10-year employee who is making the same money as a 2-year employee. It is just so frustrating, and it ruins morale. I can't deal with compression. They do that with the teachers here, and it just creates tremendous acrimony. And I want people that work for us, that are here 5, 6, 7, 10 years, I want them to see that there's a future here, not just that they're going to be stuck in the same position.
So that's why we want the total package of not only recruitment,
Yeah.
retention is just as if.
Oh, it's more important. It takes, and these guys both have been cops a long time. It takes about 5 years for someone to pay off. And I have spent a fortune training people. It costs a lot of money, even just an officer. Just think about 3 months of paying somebody a salary to ride in a car with somebody else. So you got two. When they're out on their own, I got 2 people. So it's very expensive to train people. What I'd like to start is some of the officers, like the detectives, my staff, we have take-home cars. That's fine. But I'd like to start a take-home car program for an officer. Well, we'll come up with a better policy, but for the most part, once you're off your year's probation, you become a full-time, non-probationary employee, we'll give you a car. There'll be parameters set up, but we have a policy already. Kurt and I discussed it.
Tie this to retention.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, this is huge.
I think the problem is you can give people more money right up front, but that doesn't mean you're going to keep them.
That's right. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you this is the ideal solution. This is going to solve everything. I'll have 20 people tomorrow. It's not going to do that, but it's going to get us started. But I'd like to stagger the cars so that we'll buy a couple extra cars a year. There's no sense in buying. Go ahead.
Tie this, I'm making a recommendation. So my recommendation to you would be to tie this so that the person had to be here, pick a number, 2 years.
Well, it's usually 1 year for probation.
1 year.
Right. And the reason I say this, I want them to have to look forward to that.
So I come on board, I go through the 3 months, I get $20 and whatever it is, 50 cents an hour, and then at the end of a year,
Right.
you will come to me, or Lieutenant Schimber would come to me and say, you passed muster, here's your take-home.
Yeah. Once you get off probation, probationary, I didn't mention that. Once you get through the FTO program, you're still on probation. And the probation period lasts a year from the time we get you for a year. That way we see if you're a decent employee or if you're going to do something stupid or whatever, and we can fire people for cause. I've had to let people go just on probation. You don't need a reason, they're just not making it. I just let someone go 3 months ago maybe.
So
Didn't make it.
two extra vehicles per year, how low would that get us? Because I know, you have some right now. How low will those two, how long would we need to be before we can get everybody?
Well, Kurt doesn't know this, but it won't take very long because I'm so short. So in a couple, and by the time they get through probation, we'll have the cars. So, and I need some spares here. That is not going to be a problem. Now, that's what I want done today. Well, just those two things. That's all I want. I want the starting pay, the agreement with, or the consensus of the council to increase the starting pay and to implement a take-home car program starting April 1st. That gives, Kurt has asked me, because that's 6 months and he'll have to do a budget amendment. And I have no problem with that. My officers are all excited. My recruiters are excited. We've sent out some ads, but in the ads, we didn't put any money. We just put competitive pay and benefits. Now, next budget year, this is what we're going to start, or what I'd like to start. I'm not telling you what we're going to do. I'm asking you for your help.
Okay, and Chief, when we're talking about this $2,000 signing.
One time.
One time. Signing bonus, would that cause any morale issues for
No.
people that say, I didn't get it? Why not?
Well, I'll tell you why, because they're sick of working overtime.
That's what I was gonna say too, is when, I don't know if everyone realizes here how much overtime, and I think our city manager said overtime is great until it's not. At the beginning, I like this extra money, so when we're.
Great
looking at
until
this
it's
too,
not.
I want everyone to realize how much we're paying at time and a half, that if we didn't have to do as much of that, that could be back in the budget.
It was brought up to me that some overtime is good. I get that. But too much. I've already got, we know we've got 1 or 2 people that are ready to leave. They're working too much. They don't want to do that.
How much mandatory a week are you giving them right now?
Anybody answer that?
I'd say approximately 2 shifts of pay period, 2 to 3 shifts of pay period.
Each person.
2-week pay period.
Remember, I'm so short.
Are you okay with 1,000? Sorry, I apologize. Sorry. Are you amenable to $1,000 up front and $1,000 at the end of the year after their probation period?
Yeah. That's another great idea.
Yeah,
We by the time they're finished their cross-training, they'll already be off probation. But these are just ideas that we're going to tweak. Tweak a lot of this. And again, this will not be in this will not be in 2000. It won't take effect till next October because this is not in the budget. And this is, there's going to be a cost to this.
To follow up on what Rick said, I would just be concerned that somebody could leave the minute after you gave them the 2,000.
Well, there'll be some.
I would want the carrot there.
We'll see what we can do to make sure that they're going to be here. But these are ideas that we have. Again, this is all about recruiting and retaining. When you're cross-trained, we've always had a 12% bump in your pay. I'd like to move that to 14%. Kurt and I have discussed this, and he's got the pay. Again, this is for us to discuss during budget hearings and stuff, but I want you to see the other ideas that I have going forward. Because I'm telling you right now, you increase the starting pay and you give them take-home cars, that's all well and good to get people in the door, and it'll keep some people here, but it's not going forward, you want people to see that you're going to take care of them the longer they're here, if they're a valuable employee. If they're not a valuable employee, there's ways, we're not going to deal with you. I want to be able to recruit the best possible candidates. That's what I want. there's a couple people sitting back there, I see Marilyn back there, but the people that have been here, and you guys have been here for a long time, the service level here is beyond belief. I live here. I know what the service level is like. And I've had people, in fact, anecdotally, but Sandy Cook was talking to me the other night, and she says, I've got people coming in here to buy condos that say, one of the reasons I want to live here is your public safety department. That doesn't happen anywhere. Nobody goes to New York City and says, I'm coming here because NYPD is so great. Nobody goes to Daytona. This is just an unusual situation. We have an extremely safe city that's bordered by a not-so-safe city, and we've kept it this way, and I don't want that to change. Again, I live here. I have an investment in the city.
Chief, I wanted to let you know that I did have a call, I think 3 to 4 people that have reached out to me and are very concerned about this and want to know what they can do to support you. They need, and I said, well, no, we'll be here too. And then one of the ideas that someone had on recruiting, and I don't know if this is you or Sherry, whatever, if you had an event here, and not only did you have either myself or yourself and several of the officers, several of the residents of the city at that time, maybe our refreshments come in that day, and say, we love this city, we support our city, just so they know what our residents are like. Would something like that ever work?
Yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I was just talking to Mike about something like that. Let me get him in the door.
Okay.
That's what I need. The difficult part is this. If you're a young person, and I'm not a social media guy, I don't know if any of you are, but I'm not a social media person, but if you're on a Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and you've got thousands of people that talk to you, and you tell people that you want to be a police officer, do you know the abuse that they get? So it takes a special person that still wants to do this job, because it's not very popular. You just read the newspapers every day. In fact, today in the editorial page, there's a huge story on keeping bad cops. We call them gypsy cops, but they're bad cops. And the article is not wrong. There are police officers that have managed to dodge losing their certificate because there's a lot going on. But if you read the article, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I can't afford to hire these people. I won't. And some people will. And that's how bad things happen. So I'm losing senior officers, other agencies, retirement, other professions, local police departments. This is just a recap.
Chief, what is the pecking order in the organization? Who does what to whom? You're the top.
Right. I'm the CEO, basically. I work for Mike.
I got it.
And then I have Mike Fowler, who's my captain. So he's my right-hand guy. He takes over when I'm not here. He controls the patrol division, which is run by Lieutenant Schoenbrod, and he controls the fire side, the fire EMS side, which is going to be was run by Lieutenant Howard, who just retired. Now it's going to be run by R.J. Metters.
So who do all the officers report to? You got 35.
Okay. The detectives report to Sergeant Long. Okay, Jessica Long. The detectives report to her. She reports to Captain Fowler. The patrolmen report report to their sergeants. There's a sergeant on duty all the time. They report to the sergeant. Sergeant reports to lieutenant. Lieutenant goes to Captain Fowler, and I'm sort of like the front man, I guess you could say.
And Patterson handles the officers? I think you...
Mike Schoenbrod. No, Mike Fowler. I got 2 mics sitting here. So
What about the training?
the training? Yeah.
That's Officer Patterson?
No.
How many training officers do you have?
1, 2, 3, 4.
So someone oversees.
Yeah, but they're just patrol people, and they report to a sergeant. Just in police work, the sergeant on duty is not the FTO sergeant. It might be, but it's just one of the sergeants that has that assignment. So the FTO people will go to. They might not go to their sergeant. They'll go to another sergeant, whoever's in charge of the program. Every one of us wears a lot of hats, which is not abnormal. And
Right, you just jump back and forth.
everybody.
Okay. But it's at just a cocktail conversation level, Jessica handles the detectives, you handle the officers.
Patrol. Yeah, and then Jessica has a boss, Captain Fowler is in charge of
I understand, they
overall.
both go into,
Everybody has somebody to go to.
it's simple, okay.
So one of the recommendations I'm making for next October is that we institute some type of longevity clause. This will be, Kurt and I have discussed this. This is kind of going to come up, be tweaked a lot. But basically, there'll be like a reward for being here for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, to make you want to stay. How we do that, that's going to be discussed. I guess I'm pretty right with that. What I do want to do is, I was speaking about these FTOs. When the FTOs are training somebody, we pay them extra, a differential, we call it, a 5% of their salary. But when they're not training, we don't pay them. I want to start paying them year-round. I want to start paying, some people just don't want to be a supervisor. They love being a patrol person, but I want to, if you're willing to be on the SWAT team, or you want to be a motorman, or you want to be an FTO, I want to give you a bump for doing that. Because those are specialty jobs that we need done.
And they've stepped over and above.
Right.
Okay.
And you want to make it interesting. Again, this is all about retaining people, making it exciting to stay here. So we discussed a 2% raise for, say, 7 years of service, a 2% raise for full-time 10 years. These are things, again, that'll probably be tweaked as the budget comes in, but Kurt's got some pretty good handle on the numbers. And then, like I say, that 5% differential for the specialty units. I know when I was, that you only get one, by the way. When I was a young officer, I was all those things, not the motors. But I got one differential. You don't get 3 or 4. But if you're getting something for doing it, you want to do more kind of thing. I need this, like I said, to prevent service decline. It's very, very expensive to correct this retroactively. If I bring people in, I spend a lot of money on training, and I just keep losing them as what we call a training ground for another agency. Pardon me, it's not good. It just costs the city money. Private companies now are starting to pay what we start at. So you have to ask yourself, why would a young person do this kind of job? Thankless, many times, dangerous, yes, unless you're a special person. Why do it if you can make the same money working, doing something else with the same amount of education, training, et cetera, et cetera? Long-term benefits, pretty self-explanatory, but my hiring will be easier. My background, this all costs money. Everything that we do here costs money. Background investigations. It takes, I have one background investigator, but we have 2 trained to do backgrounds, and he's helping. It costs money to do a background investigation. You're paying somebody to go out and see if they're suitable to work here. The cross-training is expensive, field training is expensive, and the equipment's expensive. It just is. And quite frankly, if I hire somebody and we give them a vest, an armor, body armor, and they quit, that body armor is custom made for them. That's gone. That's $700 gone. This is an expensive business. So, Kurt, time. I give the stage to the finance people.
So Kurt, 2 things that we're asking for today, or the chief's asking for today, is that increase in the wages. And then the second thing is the take-home car, and we need to know what that's gonna cost. When will we discuss the parameters around the take-home car, mileage, or all of that?
Those will be chief. That's more of a chief question about the actual policy. I try and stay out of the day-to-day operations of each individual department.
So the ask
I just
for-
have to fund it.
So the ask today is the take-home cars. So is it completely on the chief how he manages that, or does he come back to us and say mileage and things like that?
For the most part, once we add the cars, the real expense that I'm concerned about is the purchase of the vehicles. They are more expensive, and I'll get into some of the numbers here in just a second.
If you can address the insurance and the gas too, to be included in this.
One more thing. What is the top officer make? Because we're doing the $1.70 an hour across the board, correct? I mean, that's what I'm getting, is now, it's not just for the new people.
Correct.
So what does that top person make? I get the $20.58 for the newbie, but what is, without going into?
Well, what the ask that the chief has is from Captain Fowler down.
Correct.
And so, I don't remember what Captain Fowler makes.
Captain Fowler out, I'm talking about the top.
lieutenants or-
Yeah. Pick the lieutenant.
Lieutenant,
How much do you make an hour?
At 36.73
Thank you.
after 20 years.
Thank you.
So, as the mayor just said, the chief asked for two things immediately, the salary increase and the take-home vehicles. So when I looked at this, I said, okay, what is that going to impact in current budget year? As chief said, we're looking at an April 1 effective date. So I said, what does that do to this year's budget? And then what would that put us at for the following year? So I have two slides here that say, what do I need this year? And then the next slide will be what is the impact to next year for a full budget cycle? And how would we pay for that? So as was mentioned, Chief actually he said 35 in the budget, and that's how he's operating. There's actually 37 in the budget. If you remember, we had already budgeted before the chief said I can do it with 35. So we have 37 in there, so there's two positions that would save us money in the budget, and that is approximately $140,000.
With just those two officers.
Correct. And that's all in. That's medical cost, workers' comp, all of those type of things, retirement, all those pluses. So that's just not salary. So immediately we have roughly $140,000 to begin the year to work with in there. The costs associated with the salary adjustment for the remainder of the year is roughly $100,000. Excluding any additional overtime that we're running right now, but we're having savings because we don't have people. So those budgeted salaries are being, in essence, transferred over to the overtime line item right now. So this year, the salary adjustments would be a wash.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yes.
Forgive me for my stupidity. What is 37 sworn positions budgeted, staff to operate 35? What does that mean?
So in the actual budget document, we have 37 positions.
Okay.
Chief, at the beginning of the year, said,
So you went into the year with 37
Yes.
officers budgeted?
as our balanced budget, we have 37 sworn positions. Chief said he's going to operate at 35.
This is the conversation you, me, and
Yes.
Mike had? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly where,
I'm just trying to get close here. Okay.
so that's that savings. And so the adjustments in this year's budget, I wouldn't have to come to you and ask for a budget amendment for the salaries. Now, the vehicles, I would ask for a budget amendment. We are currently transitioning to hybrid vehicles, so they're a little bit more expensive. Operationally, you'll have to ask the chief how they feel those are going. I think we have two or three in service right now. Two?
2 or 3. We have 2 that we purchased that are hybrids. They had an initial problem, but they ran a software update remotely, and everything's going great.
I guess my question is, why do we have to account for this? If we're going to put the cars as a retention 1 year, isn't that 1 year out that we have to purchase them?
Well,
Why would we have?
you
to
want, because I don't want to buy all of them at once. They're going to last about 5 years. So if I stagger buying them, I can stagger replacing them. So it's advantageous to start with 2 every budget year for a couple of years, or maybe 3 years at the most. And we always replace cars anyways on the other end, but that'll be extra.
But we have a handshake agreement that those cars will only be allocated to those officers who have passed muster.
Oh, absolutely.
The gentleman here is happy with,
It's like-
and they've been here for 1 year.
Oh, absolutely. That's a benefit.
I think
You-
he's
you
saying
have to earn
right
it.
now, there are officers that are over this 1 year mark that do not have a take-home.
Yeah, they'll start getting them.
How many, okay, fine, then that's a great clarification. Thank you
I
very
hate
much.
to say this, but I don't have a lot of them left.
Well, give me, how many do we have?
How many cars or how many people?
The mayor's position on this is that you have people that, if we approve this,
Are gonna start getting take-home cars.
because they've been here more than.
And I have, believe it or not, I have enough cars now, because I have so few people working, I have enough cars now and also spares that I can start doing this program right away and giving a couple, 2 or 3 people a take-home car now, that they all qualify for it, they're off probation, and they can start. Some of my senior officers.
So the 2 cars that we purchase.
They'll go to somebody.
Would go to somebody, or you'd leave them in the garage and.
No, they'll go to somebody that's working. I mean, somebody that's off probation, that, you know, that is a full-time officer. And they'll argue over who gets what, but that's all about us. We'll come up with, we have a policy now, like Lieutenant Schoenbrunn has a take-home car, so that he has a policy that he follows with his car.
I guess my only problem on this is that what I'm hearing is that you already have enough cars to make this happen.
No, I don't have enough cars as I start to fill the slots that are empty. I have enough cars to give a couple people a car now.
The people that are coming on board, we're not gonna give those cars to for another year.
Yes.
There's really no sense of, I'm saying,
I know that. There is no, you're absolutely right, except for the fact that.
trying to drill down here.
I got it. The problem will be, we'll end up having to buy 4 cars at once, and then we replace them down the road.
If I can add one thing to that, right now, it's taking us about 6 months to get a vehicle. So even if we place the order tomorrow, it's going to be near the end of the fiscal year that we can see these vehicles. And hopefully at that point, we've hired a few people and they're 4 or 5 months into their year. So it is taking a long time to get vehicles.
So from the CapEx expense, you'd rather CapEx at 2 every year than have to come up with 4 every year?
Correct.
What about leasing them?
I'm not a big fan of leasing for one reason only, and that is if you lease, you're tied into a 3-year or 4-year mandatory payment each year. If we have an economic downturn, I've been through this with another city, 2 scenarios. And what happens is we have the cash, we pay the cash for that vehicle, it's done that year. I don't have to worry about years 2, 3, and 4. Leasing, overall, you might make a little, have some savings, but overall, if you hit that economic downturn and you have to cut in the budget, you can't cut a leased vehicle. You have to make that payment in years 2 and 3. So usually capital purchases are made with reserves. So it doesn't impact your savings annually per se. You buy it up front, it's done. There's no future payment. That's the whole point. The other thing, the city I used to work for, Holly Hill, before my time there, they had 1 year, and they have a department about the same size as ours, but they went out and bought 13 vehicles in 1 year. And that's great when you have the money, but about 5 years later, guess what happened? We were short of funds. It was a tough economic time, and we had 13 vehicles that need to be replaced. And that's what Chief and I have talked about and are trying to avoid, that huge one-time hit of having to buy 4, 6, 8 vehicles in 1 year. If we stagger it, we currently do 2 or 3 vehicles every year. That's what we've been doing since I've been here, and it was done long before my time starting here. And I think it's a great way to look at it, as you're turning vehicles. And this does help the take-home vehicle. I didn't used to be a big take-home vehicle fan because you've got to buy more vehicles. But the one thing I've seen firsthand, in my former city, we had a manager came in and said, no, we're going to do this because we have to be competitive. Now, my former city was also the last one on that pay scale. So we were a training ground, and to do it, the officers automatically started taking care of their cars. They were dirty, dingy when they were what they call hot seating the cars, which meant those cars ran 24/7. And one officer got out of it at the end of the shift, a new one hopped in, and there was always issues about this guy's a slob, this guy smells, this guy leaves his trash. Versus once they made him take home vehicles, they were out there spit shining their cars. Those cars were immaculate, and for the supervisor, the ones that weren't, it was easy to tell who was doing what to their vehicle.
Can I interrupt you 1 minute and have the lieutenant come up? I don't want to put him on a spot, but when we talked about that, explain to me, and I don't know, it'll only take a minute. I don't know if everyone realizes too about, can you tell me about the gear that you talked to me about, transferring from one car to another?
Right, so with the sharing in cars now, we have to go out and whenever an officer comes on duty, has to bring out their police gear, their fire gear, their EMS gear. They have to
In their
load up-
personal vehicle, and
Well, into their patrol car that they're sharing. It takes about an hour to load up your car at the beginning of the shift and an hour at the end of the shift.
because I didn't understand off the top the beauty of a take-home car, so I want, sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but when you talked about that, I understood, like, what is the benefit to them? And
Yeah, so
that's
not being able, or not have to load up all your paperwork, your bunker gear, your EMS gear, all that takes time.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Excuse me, what's the existing fleet size? What's the size of the fleet today?
Do you know how many vehicles we have?
We usually have about 15 vehicles. I'm not sure exactly whether I can't remember if I'm counting a couple of the engines with that, but we usually have about 15 patrol vehicles? No, we got 15 total vehicles, I think.
To outfit everybody who's a non-probationary employee right now and leave 3 in a pool, which we need because we have part-time people come in. We had a car that was hit, parked up on the sidewalk, drunk came and hit him this week. To cover that, we need to add 2 vehicles to our current fleet to get there. We just looked at it a couple of weeks ago.
And that would be with
That's for people that are
Pool.
employed.
It's also-
Yeah, that's only current employees,
Yeah,
not.
be careful, because I'm looking at being down, we're talking 12 people. So down the road, I'm gonna need more cars.
But to Councilman Frizzalone's point, those 12 people are a year from now.
But we obviously, it goes without saying, or at least I should have made it clear. If I don't need the cars, I'm not gonna buy them. Because it takes about 6, 8 months, maybe 9 months to get the cars in.
So, the only thing I'm gonna do, Kurt, I'm gonna meet with you, I'll get this week whenever. I wanna sit down and go over the advantages of lease fitting over purchasing from my experience, and if you disagree, and it could be, from an officer's perspective, it's kinda nice for you to have new cars every, 3 years. You just take it, you throw it back the keys, you lease a new one. If the car's only lasting 5 years, it could make some sense to lease it. It's certainly gonna be better for the officer to have a new car than an older car. So I would just, like I'm saying, at the end of the day, you're the boss, not me, but I would just take a look at, let's sit down and take a look at the difference between leasing and purchasing. Also, from a CapEx perspective, it keeps a lot more money in our pocket. You're paying on a per diem basis than big upfront cost. So let's just, I just want to say that to my fellow council members and the mayor, given that backdrop, and also it's that the officers get nice new cars every 3 years. So we'll discuss it.
That's fine, that's.
Yeah,
the lease thing
it's
is-
his call, it's his call.
When I need it,
There's advantages to leasing from a.
there's something to be said for both, but. yeah.
Thank you, Lieutenant, and I'm sorry, Kurt, if you want to finish.
Do you know how many cars we own now?
Not off the top of my head, no. I have a list in our,
How
for
much is our cars?
the hybrids cost 48 and change fully outfitted. That's why we're asking for 2. That's why it's roughly 100,000. So
And what have we been paying for the non-hybrid cars?
I want to say it's just over 40 fully outfitted. It's been about a year, I think, since we.
I think it's about I think it's about a $3,000 difference.
Okay, thank you.
Hybrid, which we expect to pay and more for itself over the course of the 3 years that will keep the vehicles. Well, now it's 3 years.
I think it's a good idea. I like it. I think it's a good idea.
Kurt, can I ask you a question? These are cars titled in the city's name,
Correct.
and what's that gonna do to our insurance? I mean, is that,
It really
the
is.
more cars we put on the road, the more chance we have of collecting insurance or having an accident or so forth.
Yes, the insurance impact is minimal. I believe it's about $300 a year for insurance per vehicle.
I mean, are we covered for a catastrophe, basically?
Yeah, matter of fact,
Good question.
I just got a check. Obviously, they depreciate the vehicles on what they would pay us. So we had one that I believe somebody just mentioned, the vehicle that was totaled maybe 4 or 5 months ago. We had one that was on a call up on the sidewalk and somebody sideswiped it and totaled it. I just got the check for that this morning, and it was depreciated. It was a 2017 vehicle. We got about $25,000 for
Well,
it.
I'm concerned more for lawsuits. Let's say one of the officers off-duty hits somebody and kills them. Are we covered for
Yes.
millions of dollars?
Yes.
Okay,
I believe it's $1 million policy. I'd have to go verify that, but I believe it's $1 million per occurrence.
Because it seems like any accident that any of the officers were in with the city car would automatically say, hey, deep pockets, let's go after it, right?
And keep in mind that officers have a duty to respond off hours. So even though you're talking as a vehicle, they have a duty to respond as an officer, and we cover them for workers' comp and stuff as well, off duty.
I just want to make sure the city is covered for, because the more cars we put on the street, the more likelihood there is of
Absolutely.
something bad happening.
Okay, so right now, the salary adjustments would more or less take care of itself because of the money that we're saving. So the vehicle purchase, and do you pay for that vehicle when you order it or time of?
At time of purchase.
Time of purchase.
When the dealership says, hey, the vehicle's in, usually Dave will call me and we prepare a check, and he takes that check to pick up the vehicle.
And that's very close to our next budget, is it not? But it still would not be in that next budget year. It would still fall in this one, right? 6 months from now, you're probably talking like August.
Yes. So it's probably going to be, August or September. I want to put it in that way if they are ready earlier, it's there. But we'll put another 2 in next year's budget, and if it looks like the 2 in this year, we would roll those over. If for some reason they say, okay, we can't get them to you till October, November, I'd roll that money from this year into next year.
Is the next slide next year's impact?
Correct.
Okay. Because next year's the one that's important, right?
Yes.
As far as dollars go.
Yes. So the salary adjustments for next year, and depending on longevity, who quits, who doesn't, who gets promoted, and how many years of service. And so I've got an estimate in there of $250,000 to $300,000 for just the salary adjustments. And the vehicle purchase, again, you'll see is $100,000. I'm assuming that we would October 1, as we normally do, try and get those vehicles purchased either beginning of October or November. A lot of cities, and this is why it takes so long, especially this time of year, a lot of cities have everything ready to go on October 1 because that's their budget year. And the big cities, they place orders, 50 to 100 cars at a time. And that's what ends up taking so long to get the vehicles. And we as a small city tend to get lumped because obviously I'm the dealership. If I can sell 50 cars at once or 2, who becomes your priority? Not us. So we would get that in there and try and get those ordered October 1 as well.
Where do we purchase these from? Is it a state agent? Or?
We usually purchase off of the state contract. They do a bid every year. And then whatever dealership wins that state bid, we purchase from there. Sometimes the sheriff's contract, the sheriff's association also does a bid, and sometimes they are cheaper. So we look at the bids and wherever we can get it cheapest, because it's the same car. It's just same manufacturer, just which dealer is giving you the best deal on it. So I have a note here that says it's anticipated that the city will be able to fund these requests for next fiscal year without requesting an increase in property taxes. I say that because this council took action, may have actually been last year for the current fiscal year, to pay off all of our debt. So the general fund in this year's budget had an $800,000 annual debt service payment. Next year we won't have that. So if we stay at rollback, the same tax rate, we will free up $800,000 in the budget that could be used towards this investment in our public safety department.
So you told us for the remainder of this year, it was $100,000 for the salary adjustments, which would take care of that. But going forward, when it's a whole year, it would be 250 to 300?
Yes.
Okay. And that's based on being fully staffed at the 35?
Yes, 35. So that's why it was only 100 for 6 months, and logically, you would say 6 months at 100 would be 200 for the following year. What I'm anticipating with that 100 is it's going to take us some time to find some officers. So even though we say, you know, I'm going to tell Chief, go ahead and start advertising if council gives their approval to change that advertisement for that initial officer to the 2058, and we could start advertising. But the chances of hiring an officer in the next 2 months, it takes, you know, the whole vetting process for a public safety officer is lengthy, because as Chief said, we want to hire the best. So I'm anticipating that we're not going to fill those 12 to 15 vacancies all within the next 6 months. So there's going to be a gap in that payout. So that's why I'm saying 250 to 300,000 for full staffing for all of next year.
Well, just a comment that I'd like to make. I think that taking half of what we saved in interest payments and spending that to improve our police department, public safety is money well spent.
So in one way, it's very fortuitous that you council made the decision to pay off that debt. And at the end of the day, for next budget year, your citizens are actually going to not pay 1.7 mils in taxes because the debt service has been paid off on the voted debt. So while I'm saying not requesting a tax increase, what they're going to see on their bill is 1.7 mils total to the city less than they were paying in the current year. So it's a win-win here, and hopefully we can solve a lot of the public safety crisis we're in.
If we give that whole 1.7 to the taxpayers, which is what we tentatively decided, I don't see, that's all gone.
No. So we also paid off, there was one bond that was being funded through.
It was small, wasn't it?
No, it was a larger one, and it was $800,000 a year in principal and interest payment.
I understand.
So the 1.7 is paying for the voted debt. There was still one being paid for out of the general fund, and that's where that savings come from. So you have that as well, which is a big deal that we have it available.
Yeah. All we've done is just reduced our reserves.
Yes,
Okay, do you have another slide for us, or?
I believe that is it on those things.
He's only allowed 2.
So the other part, as Chief mentioned, those other asks, you'll see through the budgetary process. So some of the things, the incentive programs, those kinds of adjustments, because we haven't finalized what we want to do, I don't know the dollar impact of those. So, but obviously those would not be effective till October 1, and the council adopts the final budget, so you'll have say in what those are and how we implement them.
We'll explain it as we go, but those are individual asks. Like they're for one person here, one person there, one here. So they're not, it's not like a whole salary study or for everybody. It's just for a couple people. Well, different times. And
So right now, so Chief, I'm still concerned, if we increase the starting wage, we do the take-home car, what are we gonna do differently in our recruiting? Because, to get more people in here to know that, what plans do you have for recruiting right now?
once I get a consensus from the council, we'll start to get more in depth as to what we actually pay and what some of the benefits are. We have a recruiter that goes and talks to, one of our people goes and talks to the different academy, we call it police academy classes, fire academy, talks there. We've put ads, nationwide ad out on a website, and we actually have some responses. Again, we put competitive pay and benefits. We didn't put a dollar amount. However, I'm not telling you this is going to solve everything. It's not. But what it's going to do is it's going to lead the people that want to do this to us rather than automatically going to somewhere else that pays more to start.
Do we advertise in Orlando and Jacksonville?
We We will be putting out, now that if I get, like I say, I'm looking for your consensus, but we will be starting to put out, I'll start advertising on our Florida Police Chiefs Association website. We have police officer positions there, and I'll start doing more advertising. The biggest thing is the schools, the police academies. Those are your biggest place where people come from, because unfortunately, a lot of people that have been police officers somewhere else, they might not be the best candidates for here. So we kind of look at an applicant who has police experience somewhere else. We look at them very carefully because we want to know, why are you leaving, or why did you leave? Whereas the people in the police academies, the rookie schools, they're new. So they really don't have a lot of baggage other than what you find out they did in their personal lives. But like I said, it's hard to stay a police officer. And police officers that jump around are not usually, I'm not saying not usually, they have to be really looked at really carefully.
Okay, and then again, we talked about this, and I know up north they make higher wages, but this sunshine with that 6 feet of snow they have there. So what do we do to recruit? And I know that they.
It's funny that you say
certified.
that. It's funny that you say that. I was at our local Chiefs Association meeting on Friday, and the sheriff, Sheriff Chitwood, has been recruiting actively around the country, trying to get people down here. So I turned to his chief deputy, his name's Joe Gallagher. Joe, how many applicants have you got from outside the state? He said 3. Now, think about this. If you're a police officer, you have a wife, you have a family, your kids are in school, and you live in Oregon, or you live in Fairfax, Virginia. Yeah, the sunshine's very nice down here, but it's hard to uproot your whole family for one job, for just, if your wife can't move, that kind of thing. So it's not a panacea. Most of our recruits are gonna come from people that have this servant's heart, that want to get into the business. We might get some from outside, but most of them are gonna come from Florida. Go ahead.
If I could, I looked at a 2016 study for a triple train city in California, and I have excerpts from their suggestions for recruitment on this candidates I don't know.
And then Attorney Carey, I know a couple people here have a hard stop. They have a call at 1:30. So now, do we just need a consensus, and we're going to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, or where are we at now?
Yeah, you can provide a consensus to staff for them to bring it to you at the next commission meeting, or the next council meeting, or whenever they can.
So we just
Gotta read the last slide.
Michael, what do you have to say, Attorney? Well, I don't.
First of all, if they're within the budget, with the exception of the amended request for the cars, you can do the salaries right now, because he's recruiting every day. So the longer we wait, the harder it is to get good people. So I suggest we get a consensus to authorize the chief and the city staff to market the salary now, and then when we have to do the public notice and have it on the agenda for the cars, we can do the cars secondary. Because then, when you get the recruit in, you say, by the way, it's on the books that we're going to get cars for everybody, so that's another incentive for you to come to the city of Daytona Beach Shores.
So you're talking March 1st, and because remember, not only do we have to advertise that, we have to, the hire people too, have to get that wages. That might take a while to get that into effect. Are you saying March 1st?
No, he's asking right now only for the 15-something.
I think Kurt should answer this, because we never discussed that, because we had talked about April 1st. It was 6 months into the
You want to
budget.
package it all together at one time instead of...
That's very nice of you. I can do that, but.
I'm not being nice, I'm trying to be smart for you, because every day you have people coming in the door potentially to hire.
I think that what I can say is, starting April 1st, once I get that consensus, and that keeps Kurt was financially figuring all this out. We've kind of been knocking this back and forth for a couple months now before we came to you all. So unless you want to do something different.
That's the time that the increase in existing wages would take effect, correct? April 1st.
Yes, what we looked at was April 1st for existing employees. That is 6 months, but as far as advertising now, because of the hiring process usually takes a couple of months, to absolutely advertise it at that higher rate.
Great.
That's what
That's a good
Does that
idea.
answer your question?
Yeah.
But
If that's what you want us to do, I'm in favor of it. I'm sure my city councilmen, they're all entitled to their opinions, but again, you're the one, the first word out of your mouth is crisis.
Yep.
So if we have to wait because of logistics and because of rules, no problem, we got our city attorney, but if we don't have to wait for that,
Well, I mean, you're gonna have to amend the pay scale and have that, right? I mean, Kurt,
The pay scale hasn't traditionally come before the council.
okay,
we don't do that.
okay.
That
All right,
falls
so
under-
it's a little different than any of my other clients
Yes.
because it's a non-union situation here.
Yes.
So, yeah, if that's not an issue, then, yeah, there's no reason you couldn't go forward with council correction.
So if
So we're gonna ask, so Councilman Bryan, are you in favor of this? Do we have your?
I think I'm in favor of the individual, increasing individual. I think we need to take a hard look at the overall picture, whether why people are leaving and what kind of, what's the proper staff level. So if you want to go ahead and advertise the increase, that's okay with me.
Okay, all right. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I am. I just had one comment that I just wanted to ask the chief. I know that personally, I would like to be a cop, but I don't want to be a fireman. Is that a hindrance in our hiring?
sometimes it is. The problem is, if this is really not the forum for this, but I'll be glad to say it. This is how I feel about this. If you look to separate the two, you can always do that. You can separate the two, but what you're going to get is a lot less service. Remember, we're talking about a service model here. We're not talking about how we do things or whatever. I'm talking about this system that we have. It's very difficult to manage. I'm not bragging. It is difficult to manage. My issues are personnel issues. But when it works and when we manage it, which I've done for many years, the service level is way higher because there's nobody sleeping on the job. The officers are on the street, and whatever call they get, you just need them to answer it. You don't need to call for somebody else. I've gone over this with many people over the years, but here's what I'm going to tell you. When I was a patrolman, and we would get on the scene of a huge accident, we would call fire rescue. Now they're rolling out of their station. They have what's called shoot time. Takes a few minutes for them to, I'm paraphrasing, but slide down the pole, put their gear on, come out and help us. People are laying there bleeding. We don't have that in Daytona Beach Shores. Whoever shows up on that call is going to start the rescue service.
Don't get me wrong, Chief. I love the, but I was just saying,
There are
is this causing you a problem?
Oh, this is,
Recruitment-wise, yeah, that was.
I think all police departments are going through this now. Like if I said to you, well, I don't care about the police, we'll just hire a bunch of fire guys and they can sleep in the station and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you probably could staff it because that's all they do. But yes, police recruitment is very difficult nationwide. I'm not going to tell you that it's any more difficult. It's difficult to find the right people, but when you find them, they're the best. And there are other ways of doing things. Public safety is not easy
I think
to
to
manage.
Mayor's point, and she brought up a great point. I mean, the whole, she's hit the nail on the head. We're doing things for you, it's a crisis, and the question is, can we still recruit? And all I think we're saying is that if we have to go to a different model, given how bad things are today, and they are bad, there's no doubt, you're correct about that, we should take a look at it. I will only say that Ponce Inlet looks a lot like us. They're 7 miles, we're 4.5 miles, they're 3,500 people, we're 4,000, they've got their own firehouse, we've got our own fire, yada, yada. They look very similar. They have 14 officers and 13 fire They have separated it out. It works for them. So let me just finish. All I'm saying, I'm not trying to say which one is better. All I'm saying is that to the mayor's point, she's right. It's which one is easier to recruit, and to the vice mayor's point.
Well,
At the end of the day, that's what they do, that's what we do. I happen to prefer that model, you know that. I've been very clear about that. I prefer separating church from state. That's Rick Frizzlone speaking. Having said that, I'm not in your job. But if it's easier to recruit, Chief, we ought to at least take a look at separating church from state.
Let me just, only one difference between us and Ponce Inlet. I have about a 15,000 daily population. Ponce Inlet has nowhere near that.
I get it.
I'm not arguing. I did not come here 23 years ago thinking I knew anything about public safety. I've learned over the years that the model works, but it's difficult. But I will tell you, you will not get the service level from a separated police and fire department. And it doesn't, if I...
But we'll have a police and fire departments. We may have a very, very talented police and fire department because you're recruiting people who, the cop doesn't like, here's what I'm told, the cop doesn't like fire and firemen don't like bullets. So, I mean, it
can happen.
It's right. So, all I'm saying, just keep an open mind, that's all.
I've got an open mind for anything. I'm telling you that if you want to keep your service level up, you're gonna this is at least a start. And I'm not telling you this is a cure-all. I'm telling you that I can make a start to solve these problems, because the people that are leaving, the people that I've noticed that are leaving because the policing part of it is not what they want to do. For not all of them, but a lot of them. Fire is easy. Go sleep in the station. You can have fun. You don't have to do anything. Hiring police officers. The sheriff is 80, at the last count, 80 personnel down. Out of a 200, what's he got, about 240? That's a lot of people, and they're fleeing the sheriff's department. Not because he's not paying decent money, but because they can make a lot more money in Orange County, Seminole County, et cetera, and not have to work as much. It's hard to be a cop.
I've done some research, as you probably know, there's only one other department in Florida that's triple trained, that's Indian River Shores. They happen to be, and I'm not saying that because I think triple train is bad. I think if you do it right, it could be good. I'm not against triple train, but they don't have a recruiting program. And this is just some information about them in general. And I think we should spend some time finding out why they don't have a recruiting program.
I'll get the paper.
Why they don't have a recruiting problem or a recruiting program?
Problem. They don't have the kind of vacancies that we have, and we should try to find out why.
Again, I think this is for another day and time,
I'm not saying today, yeah.
but
But I've done
yes, sir.
done a little bit of preliminary research, and I think more work needs to be done so that we're actually comparing apples to apples.
I think that, like I say, the service level that we give, I'm not prophesizing. If city council decided to go in a different direction, that's really for the city to decide. I'm just here to manage what I have, but I need some help from you, and that's why I came today for the, for this.
I'm in favor of it. I know they have that call that they have to do. So right now, Attorney Carey, I just want a consensus and then asking to be put on the agenda for February 9th.
Yes, yeah, at the workshop, you can get consensus and give staff direction, but not take official action.
Okay. Michael? Okay, all right. So Sherry, can you add it to that?
Yes, ma'am.
So do we have, before we end, do we have any final questions for the chief, captain, lieutenant, or Kurt?
Well, I would just make one comment. When I ask about the people that don't want to be triple trained, if I was in an accident, I want to know that the first person showed up could take care of me and not wait for somebody else to come. So I think there's a lot for it. My only question was, is it costing you the inability to get the people?
Well, unfortunately, what it does is certain people come into the business, they come in as police officers, they're doing a great job, and then we train them as a firefighter rescue person, and then they say, well, wait a minute, I can go make the same money and I can sleep half the time. That's one of the issues.
See, you know what, I was going to go there, but I didn't want to pile on, but that is what I'm being told.
That's one of the reasons I'm here.
We were training for other people to steal from us.
Once I'm competitive and once I give them these benefits, the golden handcuffs, it's harder to move. And that's what I'm asking for. You all understand, this is a business. But my business is service. That's all I do. And I have a customer base of everybody here and everybody outside that I want to give that good service to. And if you ever want to talk to me about the first time I ever saw public safety in action, Fowler remembers. I don't want to take up too much time, but let me tell you, as a police officer, watching people that were cops save somebody's life and cut them out of a burning car I was in shock because I'd never seen this before. I just got here and that happened, and 2 or 3 of them are still here. And saving that lady's life, which if it was me, I couldn't have got her foot out from under the car because I didn't have the equipment. I'd had to wait for the fire department. I didn't wait for anybody. They had it all there.
Was that an example of the one video we saw, and it might have been the same day of the accident, might have been Vinny, but I'm not sure, was the policeman, and then the car caught on fire, so he went back, he got his fire, and he was immediately on the scene.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'm not going to tell you that it's 100% effective, but I think we give good service. And you know, one thing I do know, we don't get complaints. We don't get people saying, hey, the officer was rude to me, the officer beat me up, the officer shot me for no reason. We don't get that because of their empathy that they have.
Okay. And before I end the meeting, Richard, I'm looking at this, that, that they have the same sort of the public safety. Where are you getting the information that they don't? I don't see it on here. Was it?
I talked to them.
And they said they have 0 turnover?
No, they said I think they have 2 people retiring now, this one actually quit.
That's it, okay. So.
I also have some financial information that I'll pass out. I'm not saying that I've done enough research to say this is apples to apples. I'm just saying it's worth looking into.
Okay, thank you for researching that. Okay, if there's nothing else.
The other thing on the bottom of that first sheet is they have a thing called Red Alert where they notify their citizens of emergency. And it seems to be working pretty well. And that's something that I think we ought to consider.
And it's called Red Alert?
Yeah, it's on their website. They use a company, I think it's OnSource, I forget the name of the company, but anyway.
There's a big problem with that. Go ahead, I'll tell Richard what it is after.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, because I know that you guys have to walk over for that meeting. Anyway, thank you guys very much for showing up today. Just wanted to let you know, make sure you note that we are going to start on the charter review. That will be the first meeting of every month from 3:30 to 5:30. We'll have a workshop, so that'll be February 9th, March 9th, and April 13th. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Richard, let me tell you about this Red Alert.